couple of weeks ago. So we'll start with a prayer to Prabhupada and to spiritual master. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Jai Gaur Premanand. Okay, so we are at verse 7. So before we jump into more discussions, so we have understood till today, what we have understood is sadhana. The first step is Shraddha. Sorry, not sadhana, Shraddha. That was the first, how we come to Shraddha. We had 3 verses for that, the first 3. Then the next 3 verses were Sadhu Sangha. So 6. And now this step takes us to the to Bhajan Kriya, which is the 3rd step. Okay, Bhajan Kriya, Anartha Nivritti, Nishtha, Ruchi. So Bhajan Kriya, what does Bhajan Kriya mean? Actually, even before we jump into this verse, when we ended the class, you know, we had I requested every one of you to give a thought to a statement that Prabhupada makes in the quote of 6th. He says that it is an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object of disciplinary action. So I requested everybody to give a thought that what do you mean by that? Who's like, we see that many senior devotees are subject to disciplinary action. So what does Prabhupada mean there? What was Prabhupada's purport in saying that it's an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object of disciplinary action? So if anybody has given it a thought, please share. What do you think it means?
Only can be taken, this kind of decision only can be taken by the, some pure devotees, not the ordinary devotees can even think about that. I mean, I cannot see anything, otherwise it contradicts, a lot of, as you mentioned, a lot of people, they kind of they have been taken out from the, GBC and all. So,
yeah. They have been taken out
by the authorized people, or the empowered people, they can take such kind of decision.
Yes, so that's a good point that you bring out, Prabhu, that somebody who has a power of authority can take a disciplinary action. So that's a good point you bring forth. Anybody else has any other thoughts?
Probably what I understand from this statement is like they may be an Uttam Adhikari, they may be a pure devotee, they may be following all the bhakti process religiously, and they may be elevated devotee, but sometime if they do some activity that is not supposed to be done by a pure devotee, then they should be prone to a disciplinary action. Like the way we had it in the New Vrindavan, right? When they were very pure devotees, elevated devotees, who Srila Prabhupada gave them the authority to work on and get that New Vrindavan temple created and all other infrastructure around that. But then some very elevated devotees, pure devotees, they fall down from their spiritual path. So definitely they means, even though it was for a short period, but they did get detoured from the path of spiritual bhakti, and that is the time they were taken out from by the GBC. So that is what I understand from this problem.
So let me see if I understood you. So you were saying that when they fall down in a visible sense, right? Then that
Yes,
it's
Prabhuji, yes.
completely
Yes, yes, yes.
contradictory to what Prabhupada has told. Then that's a condition where a reaction can be taken. Okay, that's a good point. Anybody else has any more thoughts? I can give you a scenario. It happened to me that very same week when we were discussing this. I was writing an article for ISKCON News, and I wrote that article and I sent to the team that manages that work that I was doing. And a person who's probably like nobody's junior or senior, but he's, in terms of he's junior, he's very young. He just joined a couple of years ago, and he was reviewing my article. And when he reviewed my article, he sent it back to me. And he had there were red marks across the entire article that he changed everything. This is not right, that's not right. And then I really got very angry. I felt so offended at that very moment when I saw that. So do you think that what he did was right or wrong? Because I just told you that he's new. As I said, there's nobody junior or senior, but he joined a year or two ago, and so that's not a criteria. But just to give you the reference, I want to tell you that he's a fairly new person, and I've been around for a decade. Not to say that I'm advanced, but so is that the right thing to do for him?
I think he's reviewing, then, like, he's empowered to review whatever his opinion, he's going to present it. So it's not wrong, actually, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a very good point, Prabhu. Yes, because sorry, go ahead, Madhavi.
In my opinion, there is a way to project your point, right? Even though you find that everything is not aligning with what you are, but when you are reaching out to a senior devotee, you have to have that understanding that if he has been there in 10 years plus, definitely he would be having some level of knowledge. So we have to grant that much, and there is a way to project your point. It's not like I have been given the authority, I misuse it. That I call misusing the authority. Even though you are empowered, but if you have to present your, and that is how, what we call, right, you have to be down to earth. What we see, we have to practice that, right? We have to be full of humility, humble. And when we are given empowerment and power, we should not be misusing, especially when we are reaching out to devotees who are senior and we know that they are grounded and they have some level of understanding, and we have just joined the organization. That is my understanding, Prabhuji.
That's a good point. Yes. I'll tell you what I did, what happened to me. So immediately when I saw that, I got very angry. I felt offended. My ego and my pride just burst open. And but then the very next moment, I realized that he has been given that authority, as Surendra Prabhu was saying, by my spiritual master to review it. And if my spiritual master has given him a power of authority, I don't have any, I shouldn't at all be concerned as to what he is doing. That's the way I took it. What Mati you're bringing out is a very good. Another good point is that disciplinary action can also be taken if we have a personal relationship with somebody. Then you can do that, as you were saying, that there should be a specific mood in which you should behave. That brings out the aspect of personal relationship. So somebody can take a disciplinary action if there's a personal relationship. Then the person on whom the disciplinary action is being taken, he or she will not feel offended because he or she has a personal relationship with that person. So that's a very good point you bring out. And also, many a times you'll see many senior, like Uttam Adhikaris, like Prabhupada, sometimes he would chastise even non-disciples of his. Like, he would mock people. Like, he went to London and somebody asked him that, oh, why have you come to London? He said, you came to India, you took away everything from us, but you forgot Bhagavad Gita, I have come to give you that. He was mocking that person. And many a times, there was this female news reporter, and she asked him, Prabhupada, why do you shave your head? Why do you ask your disciples to shave your head? And Prabhupada mocked her. Why do you shave your legs? He asked her. And she was just left, stunned for a minute that, what is this sannyasi asking me? What is this senior? So he said, just to remain cool, So sometimes a person who has this benevolent mood just to bring people out of their stupor of ignorance can also take a disciplinary action. So these three are the main aspects of for disciplinary action: personal relationship, then we talked about power of authority, and then a benevolent mood of service. So these things, sir, can, in these three categories, disciplinary action can be taken place, and then it doesn't bring any, it's not an anartha to the person who is conducting the disciplinary action, and it's always beneficial for the person on whom that action is being taken. So that's the importance that Prabhupada is highlighting in that one sentence, that it is an offense to consider an empowered Vaishnava an object to disciplinary action. So not anybody. So it's meant for, like you just cannot start chastising anybody. And you can even take it for, and when Prabhupada says empowered Vaishnava can be anybody. I cannot do any service unless I don't have any empowerment coming from my spiritual master, from Prabhupada, from Krishna. I cannot do anything. I'm not intelligent enough to do that. I'm not physically or mentally capable to do that. So all of us, all of you who do so much service, all of you are empowered Vaishnava. So that's another aspect that Prabhupada, empowered Vaishnava. So anybody who's doing service and getting service, right? So just imagine the other day we were at Rath Yatra, and here everybody was engaged in service and cleaning up or wrapping up, and just on the other side of the road there were 17-year-olds shooting each other. So you just imagine that they don't have that empowerment. Actually, they're mudhas. Their mind has just given up. They're just ignorance, deep in ignorance. So they are not empowered Vaishnavas. So that's the other aspect of empowered Vaishnava. Okay, so let's jump on to our today's verse. So we talked about that this verse is going to take us through from beyond. We did Sadhu Sangha, and now we have come to this. The next one, which is about bhajan kriya. It'll take its other path. Somebody wants to read the verse?
Sure, Prabhuji.
Yes, please.
Syat Krishna namak chaitadi sitapi avidyaya pito patapta rasanyasya narochikanu kintva adarada anudinam kalau shaiva justa saveda karmai bhavati tadgada mula hantri.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I can try, Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Sat Krishna Nama Charitapadi Sitapi Avidya Pito Patapatya Rasanyasa Na Ruchikanu Kintvi Adarat Anudhinam Kalu Seva Justa Swadi Kramad Bhavati Tad Gada Mula Hantri.
Thank you. Who else wants to read? No one? Okay. Sayat Krishna Nama Charitadi Sitapya Vidya Pittoptapta Rasanasya Narochikanu Kintavadrad Anudinam Khalau Seva Jushta Swadvikramad Bhavati Tadgad Mula Hantri. The holy name, character, pastimes, and activities of Krishna are all transcendently sweet like sugar candy. Although the tongue of one afflicted by the jaundice of avidya, ignorance, cannot taste anything sweet, it is wonderful that simply by carefully chanting these sweet names every day, a natural relish awakens within his tongue and his disease is gradually destroyed at the root. So this is talking about how, when we keep practicing, right? So we have talked about Shraddha and Sadhu Sangha. And when we keep practicing what we are associating with people we are learning, and then bhajan kriya. So when we take bhajan kriya, when we are saying we take bhajan kriya, it's very much like taking a stand, right? Once I start taking a stand, no, I will do this. Right? So that's bhajan kriya, that I'm going to do this. And that's bhajan kriya can be loosely also, connected to the position where we get our first initiation, right? We have taken a stand, now we are doing this regularly again and for a specific period of time. So we have shown that we are serious. So when I say that we take a stand, what it means is that we become receptive to this knowledge that we are gaining. And then we start taking in the instructions as they come to us. But unless I have created a proper environment in my heart, in my mind, and in the external surrounding, I will not be able to receive the instruction. That is why Rupa Goswami first asked us to build that Shraddha. And when we have that Shraddha, we start hanging out with devotees, and we are cultivating an environment, a proper environment of our heart, mind, and the external. So then I'll be able to receive these instructions, right? If we don't go through those steps, like for example, Shraddha, so we are not doing this first verse, right? Vacho vegam, mansa krodh vegam, jibha vegam, udaropasta vegam. So it doesn't mean that we have to be perfect in those, but we have to sincerely make an effort to control those. And when we do that, when we associate with devotees sincerely, again, that sincerity is most important. Then we will kind of set aside all the doubts and the faithlessness that's in my heart, which disturbs and distracts me. So what happens that unless we have not got that Shraddha, we are not associating with devotees, we might come in contact with good instructions, but it doesn't take root. I always meet many people who on book distribution who are extremely interested in the philosophy, right? But then the moment they move out of there and I try reaching out to them after that, I email them, they stop responding to me. Why? Because even though they came in contact with good instruction coming from Prabhupada, from Krishna, but it didn't take root in their heart. Why? Because faithlessness is deeply rooted in them. It's distracting and disturbing them. That is why Shraddha and Sadhu Sangha are very important to propagate and to establish bhajan kriya in our lives, right? We start acknowledging our shortcomings. That's what's very important there, right? And when we start acknowledging our shortcomings, then the knowledge is kind of opening up our door of our heart to all that knowledge, heart and mind. Right? Okay, now please, I'm open. So I'm receptive now to Krishna's message, receptive to what Prabhupada is giving. And only when I become that receptive, when I take that stand, then I will get the power to overcome my anarthas. Right? Bhajan kriya, anartha nivritti is the next step. Right? When we keep practicing, so sincerity is king. That's most. Just keep that in mind. When you sincerely, with perseverance, we keep on doing what Prabhupada has told us to do, even though we might be failing practically every day. I always wake up. I think I'll do good chanting. All my 16 rounds are useless. They're not of that much value. But just because I'm sincere, I am putting in my efforts. Then my intelligence is becoming fortified. I might not realize it. But if you look back, okay, 5 years I was here 5 years ago, but today I'm here, then you'll be able to realize, oh, my intelligence has grown. It's become fortified. It's become resolute in its purpose. We talked about that story of that tiny bird and Garuda, right? The tiny bird didn't have any chance against the ocean. But just because she persevered, because she was sincere and had the determination in her heart, Garuda came. And then when Garuda came, then the ocean just accepted defeat. Similarly, when we keep practicing sincerely, when we keep persevering, then Prabhupada interferes and he tells Krishna, and Krishna interferes and tells Maya, you cannot touch this person anymore again. And then the magic starts to happen, right? The Paramatma sitting in our heart, it starts talking to us. It becomes very clear, a transparent connection. Don't do this, don't even think about this. Your Paramatma starts talking to us. Devotees directly feel that, experience that illumination. That's what the whole process of Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya takes us to, anartha nivritti. And that fortification of intelligence happens, the intelligence becomes the parent in the room, the mind has no more power, it becomes like a toothless serpent. There is a verse in Chaitanya Chandramrita, it says, Tushta Indriya. Okay, forgot the verse. I'll not bring that up. But yeah, so it says that it becomes like a toothless snake. All these senses become like a toothless snake. Okay. So the verse says Sayat. Sayat means is. Okay, is. What is? Krishna Nama Charit Adi. His name, form, qualities, pastimes. Sitapi. They are as good as sugar candy or sugarcane juice. Avidya pittopatapana rasanasya. So what is happening? My tongue is being covered by the bile of ignorance. It's coated right now. My intelligence is coated. My consciousness is clouded. Right? Na rochikano. Na rochikano means the person cannot find taste. In what? In the nama charitadi. Krishna nam charitadi. Even though they are sweet, they are sitapi, they are sweet to taste. Right? We don't find that taste. And it's not just that we don't find a taste, it actually is bitter taste. So it's worse. So we are, if you take life on a number line, we are in the negative, right? At least I'm in the negative. And then this knowledge, this information from outside this closed system of this material world comes to me. And then I come on to the zero. But then when I'm on zero, it looks very good to me. But then from the zero, I have to go to the positive side. That's where Bhagavatam comes in, the spiritual master comes in, and they pull us out into the positive. So right now, neither do I have taste. It's not just about not having taste, it's actually having a bitter taste, right? Kintu, however, adarad anudinam, with great respect and consistency. Once again, consistency, sincerity, that you have to do it, perseverance. Khalau eva jushte means consistently keep chanting, associating with Krishna name, etc. Swadvikramad. Gradually those things become tasteful. Why? Why do they become tasteful? Tadgad mula hantri. Disease of avidya, earlier described, is destroyed at the root. Mula hantri. Tadgad is that disease. So that's the whole process. That's what happened. That even though it looks very bitter and tasteless to me at this moment, but then slowly all that taste, I get that sweet taste. Right? In jaundice, if you have had jaundice, sugarcane juice is the way to cure it, but then it tastes very bitter. But then as we get cured, that we get the taste of the sugarcane juice again. So that's the verse in a nutshell. Prabhupada brings out a few points in this. He gives us how one is affected by Maya, gives the symptoms. He calls it a material disease. So he gives the symptoms of those material disease, gives the cure, chanting. And then he talks briefly about the 3 stages of chanting. We have talked about these 3 stages in the past, right? Nama prad, nama bhas, shuddha nam. So darkness, the sunlight showing up even though the sun hasn't shown up, and then full sunlight, those 3 stages. And then lastly, in the last 3 paragraphs, and I'll show them later on, Prabhupada walks us through the entire stages of bhakti, those 9 stages that we are talking about. He walks us through all of them. He gives us a very clear process. This is what happens when you do this. This is what happens and how you do it. So he gives us we'll talk about that as we go forward. So the 3 types of, not 3 types of devotees. I have to change this. I'll change the presentation. It just got carried over. So so what is the symptom of the disease? And Prabhupada says in the purport that we see all over the world that people are not taking any interest in Krishna consciousness, right? So that is the symptom. Right? So that's the symptom that people have no interest in not just Krishna consciousness; they have no interest in spirituality at all. That's the symptom. We are ready to put in so much endeavor to maintain this body, but then the soul that is sitting within this body is actually dying. There's this beautiful picture that Prabhupada asked his disciples to make, wherein there is a bird sitting in a cage, and there is an old lady who's just cleaning the cage, and the bird inside dies of hunger. So that's the situation that's happening. So that's a symptom of today's world, that people are not at all interested in bhakti. Right? So that's the symptom there, right? And one thing that I just want to highlight is that when we read such verses and we see that the speaker is talking about that, we get a taste for it, and that seems very unbelievable kind of. But, okay, how can that be? No, I don't see any taste. I have no taste. And we have to understand that what we are reading, all this is not just theoretical. Right? The verse that we are reading today, that we start getting a taste, it tastes like sugar, and then whatever has been written here in this book has been practiced, it has been approved, and it has been relished by Rupa Goswami himself. There is a verse that comes in Ante Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita, where what happens is that Mahaprabhu is talking, Rupa Goswami has gone to visit Mahaprabhu in Jagannath Puri, and Mahaprabhu asks Rupa Goswami to quote a verse from, he has written 2 books, Lalita, Vidigdha Madhava, Lalita Madhava. There are 2 books that he has written, 2 dramas. And so Mahaprabhu asked him, because Mahaprabhu wants to glorify Rupa Goswami, he asked him to recite a verse from that. And the verse that he quotes is, I don't remember the full verse, but it says, Tunde Tandavani. So what he's saying is that if I had Tandavani, right? Tandava means dancing. So what kind of relishing the author is having? That when he's chanting, the holy name is dancing on his mouth. And he is getting so much taste out of it that he asks for millions and millions of mouths. Right? And when the name enters his ears, he wants millions and millions of ears. And when the holy name is dancing in his heart, it conquers all the activities of his mind, and then the senses become inert. So that is an actual verse given by Rupa Goswami himself in Chaitanya Charitamrita, which tells us that he was actually relishing what he's written here. So we should not consider this book as theoretical and think that, oh yeah, this will come sometime in the future. We can and we should strive to achieve and come to that position. Right? So that's something I wanted to highlight here, that sometimes we feel that, oh, this sounds very theoretical, or I don't believe this or that. So that is to be understood. And if you want to read more, it comes somewhere in the first chapter of Ante Leela. You can look it up. Rupa Goswami's that particular verse. So, having said that, we talked about what the symptom is, that how people are completely ignorant and they even refuse to acknowledge God or acknowledge spirituality in their lives. So that is the symptom, right? And then what is the cause of that disease? The cause of that disease is avidya, that's ignorance. And now the strange thing is that the person who is ignorant doesn't know that he is ignorant, he or she is ignorant. But somebody who is not ignorant, who's on a higher level, can see the ignorance in the other person. That is why when a sadhu comes, a sadhu can see that people are wallowing in their ignorance. They're suffering because of that. But I am in ignorance, I can't see it. I can't see that I'm ignorant. I think, no, I'm right. I know what I'm doing. So, but then a person who's in ignorance, he or she doesn't know himself. But the sign, the symptom of that ignorance is that we are forgetful of our spiritual nature. And we keep fighting on petty issues, land, country, family, my relatives, my office work. We keep fighting on these things, and we have forgotten our original spiritual nature. So, and actually, avidya is so powerful, it's so strong that even time cannot destroy it. Can you just imagine? Everything. So we have there are 4 types of destruction that happen. We are given in the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, that there are 4 kinds of destruction that happen. One is that, I'm constantly dying, right? My body is changing. And then there is a partial destruction where Brahma sleeps at night. And then there is a complete destruction and all that. So even when complete destruction happens and all the living entities go back to Mahavishnu, but when they are again manifested, they come at the exact same place where they were when they went back to, when they had, reached Mahavishnu. So their exact ignorance level is again given back to them. Right? Here you go, enjoy. So once Prabhupada was he in Australia? Probably Australia, I think. And a cockroach walked into his room. So Prabhupada saw the cockroach. Prabhupada picked him up and he let him out of the window. And Prabhupada said, now I give you the whole world to enjoy. And the devotees who were present there, they got a glimpse of, by the mercy of Prabhupada, that what would Mahavishnu be thinking when he lets go of all the jivas back into the material world, right? Mahavishnu creates the material world. He says, here you go, Jiva, go enjoy. I've created this world for you. You wanted to, probably have dance in mud and all these filth. You want to be a pig, you go be a pig. You want to be a tree, this was your mentality when you left this body or in the last millennia. Go again. Here you be a tree. So similarly, the little jiva that I am be pushed back into this material world again and again, and that ignorance never dies. That's this entire material world that goes away, and it's again created. But then the ignorance never goes away. Right? It only goes away by the mercy of sadhu, as I said. That is why we sing every day, right? Chakkudan diloje, janme janme prabhu se. Chakkudan diloje. Give us the eye, give us the vision, to get rid of this ignorance, that they can open up. We always say, Om Ajnanati Mirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah. That is the power of Guru. That the Guru can open our eyes to look at this material, to not just look, to learn to discriminate. This is good for me, this is not good for me. Right? So that's the so we cannot pay back to our Guru. That's something we always have to keep in mind. That's the power of a Guru. That's the power of a sadhu. Right? So this is how avidya is the cause of our disease. It leads to forgetfulness of our nature and our relationship with Krishna. Right? And then this leads to getting distracted by Maya. And then when we get distracted by Maya, we take shelter of we take false shelters in Maya, right? We take shelter in money, property, etc. But then when death comes, all that shelter disappears. We can just imagine how funny it is that the moment I will leave my body, everybody who's close will drop everything and would want to burn off my body, right? So they how quickly they want to get rid of me because of my body. So that's the shelters we have been taking off. This body, the money, my property. I've been taking shelter of all of that. But then that's because of my forgetfulness. So the process is avidya happens. After avidya comes forgetfulness of our nature, our relationship with Krishna. From that forgetfulness, I get distracted by Maya. By that distraction, because I don't know which way to go, I start taking shelter of bad masters. Kamadina kathina kathitam palita durnidesha. That's the essence. That I take shelter of bad masters. And they are called bad masters because they will not come to our help in our worst of our times. I'll take a pause here, see if anybody has any thoughts, anything that stood out for you during the discussion or the reading. Comments, criticism.
What is cause of the individual and collective? What does that mean?
I'll come to that.
Okay.
We'll discuss that. Any thoughts anymore? Anyone? No thoughts? Okay. So, so I just mentioned the process, right? Avidya, forgetfulness, distraction, and then false shelters. That's how it happens. That's how we fall trapped to it. But still, against hope, we keep investing in these shelters. We, despite all our heartbreak and disappointment, we still keep investing in it. How thick my covering of ignorance is, that I don't give it up. Right? So that is the individual level. That's happening to me as an individual. Okay? That's Prabhupada explaining to us. That I am ignorant, I'm forgetful of my relationship, I'm distracted, and because I'm distracted, I'm taking false shelters. So that's on an individual level. And that's the first paragraph of the purport. There's so much heartbreak here in this material world, and we don't realize that. Right? So then, on a collective level, the cause of suffering is atheistic leadership. Prabhupada explains that to us. So people who are stooped in ignorance of knowledge and spirituality, they mislead others also. So blind following the blind. Right? Prahlad Maharaj says this in the 7th canto of Bhagavatam, Andha yatha andher upagiyamana. That a blind man is following a blind man, and what happens to them? They fall in the ditch of ignorance. So people who are very strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying in this material life, and what happens to them is they accept leaders or gurus of a similar nature. Prabhupada says this, if you want to be cheated, you will be cheated. You will get a cheated guru. That's what's happened. So my intention is going to lead to the outcome. And Prabhupada says this in the preface, if you remember, Prabhupada says this in the preface that the growth and success in bhakti is dependent upon the practitioner. Prabhupada clearly tells us that. So similarly, my fall in this material world is also dependent upon me. Because I want to enjoy, I will get gurus who will teach me to enjoy. There are so many gurus you know of. I don't want to bring out any names, but there are people who have propagated sex life as a way to liberation. Some have expressed drugs as a way to liberation, and they have had followers, millions of followers. So you can't do much about it. They cannot, because of that ignorance that they have in their hearts, they cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu, Krishna. They don't realize that. So, as I gave the example of a blind man being followed by a blind man, materialistically men led by another materialistically attached man, they are bound by these ropes of ignorance, blinded by ignorance and of fruitive labor. They want to enjoy, and they're ready to work hard like an ass for that. And that has made very strong cords, that connection. And they continue again and again in this material life. Right? Krishna says this in Bhagavad Gita also in the 16th chapter, right? Yah shastra vidhim utsarje vartate kamakarta nasa siddhim avapnoti na sukham na param gatim. They don't get any sukha, neither do they get liberation. They keep just coming back here and there, this suffering the threefold miseries of life. Anybody remembers the threefold miseries of life?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, please tell me.
Adi Bhautik, Adi Daivik, and Adhyatmik. Caused by others, caused by self, and caused by natural calamities.
Yes, yeah. So threefold miseries of life, the three-pronged Trishul of Durga. So we are constantly being harassed by that. So we keep coming back into that. And Krishna describes these people very vividly in the 7th chapter. Namam Duskrinito Muda. He gives the 4 kinds of atheists who become our leaders. So not only do they propagate wrong theory, they actively oppose Krishna consciousness. They disrupt the endeavors of a devotee. If you read, if you read Leela Amrita, there is an episode where Prabhupada wants to build a temple in Juhu, and actually the Maharaj has written Giriraj Maharaj has written a book.
Yes.
About it. What's it called?
Temple in
I'll build you a temple. Yeah. And you can read that. There was this person called Nair. What he was very apt at cheating people. He would give the land, and then on some pretext or under some law, he will take the land back, and then he'll also keep the money that's been given. That's what he wanted to do with the devotees. He saw that these are all 20-year-old Americans. What do they know about doing business in India? He was trying to cheat them. And there came a point when actually Prabhupada's disciples, they got so frustrated with all that, the headache they had to go through, they sold the land, they gave up the land. And Prabhupada got so angry with them. And Prabhupada would chastise his disciples everywhere, wherever he would meet somebody, and he say, see, I am here, I am giving my sweat and blood to make a temple, and these children, they gave away the land. He would chastise them so much. So this Mr. Nair, he was so adamant upon, stealing away the land. He literally called the police there. He'd call the police, and you can read this very vividly in Leela Amrita. They explain it so clearly. Satsarup Das Goswami Maharaj explains that the police came and it pulled devotees holding by their hair. Matajis, the police came, he held them by their hair and pulled them out of the land. Can you imagine what they had to go through? So why? Because there was somebody who was so stooped in ignorance that he was not just ignorant, he was actually anti-Krishna. He was against Krishna consciousness. So these people are duskritas, duskrito buddhas. They're stooped. They don't have any knowledge, no spirituality, and they're misleading others also to not support Krishna's plan, right? So that's a very heart-touching story, that how Prabhupada's disciples had voluntarily given up all pleasures, and they all coming from America, right? Coming from good families, and there they don't have proper shelter, no electricity, no proper place to take a shower, nothing, and they were living there. And then worse on that, they were pulled away by their hair out of the land. Luckily, the person who was helping Prabhupada build that property, who was the architect there, Mr. Kapoor, he called some of the politicians, and Bal Thackeray was one of them. You all might have seen that when Bal Thackeray left his body. I don't know if I'm hoping everybody knows Bal Thackeray, but if you don't know, you can look him up. He was a big politician in Mumbai. When Bal Thackeray left his body, devotees went and chanted for him. You can see that. Why? Because he came to help Krishna conscious. He came to help devotees. When police was against, then was pulling all those devotees away, he sent his men to protect them. So what I was saying, so going back to the example of Nair, Mr. Nair, that people can be so ignorant that they're not only propagating wrong, false theories, but they're also opposing Krishna consciousness, and they disrupt the endeavors of the devotees. So they personally never surrender to Krishna, and they are pushed down into the lower planet, lower hells. Krishna says that himself. So yeah, he says that in the 16th chapter, that they are pushed down and down into the abominable lives. So that's the so individual and collective. So we talked about that. So individual is at my own level, I'm suffering. Collective is that I'm following atheistic leadership. That's the collective level. Causes of the disease. Okay. So then Prabhupada brings out, he talks about the cure. So now cure is chanting, as Prabhupada is giving us, right? So what he says is that the real disease is in the heart. If the mind is cleansed, a person cannot be harmed by the material disease. So the real disease in the heart. So the real disease in the heart, it means is that what happens is that over life after life, when we keep following a specific path, ignorance or passion, it gets so deep rooted in us that it filters down into our heart. And when we say filters down into our heart, it means that it becomes my consciousness, right? There are many things in my mind. I don't necessarily believe everything. I might be doing them, but when it comes to my heart, then I identify it as my own. Then I identify it as my nature. It's my identity. It becomes my identity. That's why Prabhupada is stressing that it's a disease of the heart. It's kind of filtered down into our subconscious. So now I am doing it thinking that that's the right thing to do. That's why it's a disease of the heart, right? And how does Prabhupada tell us? Chanting is the cure. Okay? So japa is the cure for all of this, right? So we talked about, I think we already talked about the 3 levels of chanting. Sorry, the 3, yes, Namaprad, Namabhas, and Shuddhanam. So there are 3 levels of chanting. And then in general also, we struggle every day with our chanting, right? So we sometimes fall into 4 categories if you want to put yourself in. So one is helpless failure, right? I'm not even able to do my full rounds. I was supposed to do 16, I left at 14, left at 10. So that's helpless failure. and I'm helpless and I fail. The next level comes is struggle. So I'm struggling to complete my 16 round. I'm just thinking, when will it end? When will it end? Now I'm just looking at my beats again and again. So that's a struggling level. That's the second level. Then there is another level of successful struggle. So we make a determination. Utsaha nishya dhairya tat tat karma pravartana. I make determination. So that day I have a, how you may say it, I get into the ring, have a boxing match with my mind. I punch my mind punches me. So I give a bad day to my mind. I say, no, you will have to listen to this chanting. And then my mind says, no, I'll take you to miles away, to your work, to your family, to your job, whatever it may be, and probably tell you about a shirt or something, a dress you saw at a store a day or two ago, and something like that. So, but then we have determination. So our struggle is successful. We are fighting there, but we haven't given up. So it's a successful struggle. And last and the best stage is of an effortless success. It goes beyond temptation. Why? Because now the process has filtered down into our heart. We are hearing with our heart now. No temptation can affect us. It has become like all these senses have become inert, like the toothless serpent. Those are the four stages, or actually not even stages, they're the four levels or four types where we can fall. And we would be in one group this day, might be another group tomorrow, and we just keeps going back and forth. So that's what's happening. So when we chant tomorrow, try to see where you are. No? Or not just tomorrow, try it for the next 7 days. See, and just make a point. Today my chanting was struggle. Today was effortless success. Today was successful struggle. So that you can just judge, okay, how am I doing? It's always good to have a quantification, a tangible quantification of whatever we are doing. That's why Prabhupada and all the acharyas have put a number. It's not just that, oh yeah, you chant in your mind the whole day. No, they put a number there to make it tangible for our mind, that this is important for me to do. This is what I am supposed to do. So try grading your japa on all these four grades tomorrow or for the whole week if you want to. That will be a good thing to do and understand where we stand on the process. Okay, any thoughts, reflections, discussion, anybody? Should start picking out people by names. I think that will help me. Yes.
Prabhupada has recommended us to do 16 chanting, right? 16 rounds. But at the same time, we know the more we chant, the more our heart is purified, right? And I think so. I was talking to one of the devotees. Her parents are in the Gaudiya Math, and they are asked to chant 32 rounds. So when they are initiated, so Prabhuji, by default, they are asked to chant 32 rounds, right? So they are getting more on the path of purification than for us who are not initiated but chanting 16 rounds. So how does number affect me? How important is the number in all this? Because if I'm not asked to chant 32 rounds, I'm not going to chant it. Because and the people who are asked to chant, obviously they are more into the path of purification then. Are we in some way not getting that benefit just because we are asked only 16 rounds compared to the one who are asked 32 rounds like Gaudiya Math?
So you mentioned a couple of things. Let me see if I can pick those out. One thing you said is that they are getting more by chanting more. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because obviously the more you chant, and obviously if you are getting the rasa in the chanting, like suppose some person is a exalted devotee, or means some level of pure devotee, and he does 16 rounds of chanting, right? And he gets the rasa in that 16 rounds of chanting, little bit. But suppose if it was given, or if suppose it was as one of the requirement to do 32 chanting as part of the initiation, then he would have been getting more rasa, right? Not everybody is so elevated that, okay, today I have got more time, I will do 25 rounds. Oh, today I've got more time, I will do 50 rounds. Not everybody is to that. But if it is by by force, not exactly force, but it is one of the part of our initiation, then definitely we'll take time for that 32 rounds of chanting also. Like we got time for 16 rounds. So something that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, so for one thing, Maji, 16 is not the upper limit, it's the lower limit that Prabhupada has given us. He's never said that don't chant more. When Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples were supposed to chant 64 rounds, Mahaprabhu used to say that I don't eat in anybody's house who's not a Lakpati. Lakpati means who doesn't chant 100,000 names of Krishna. So that goes over to, I think, even more than 64 rounds. So it's a lower limit, not an upper limit. But one thing, Mati, you have to understand is that I told that story of a Prabhupada disciple who, when Prabhupada went to Mayapur the first time, he went and saw the Gaudiya Math people and he saw that, oh, they are chanting 64. And what he did, he sat near Jalangi river and he would chant the whole day. And he even came to a point where he was criticizing Prabhupada, saying that, Prabhupada, why have you given such low standards for your disciples? You should ask them to chant more. And then that disciple disappeared, and a couple of decades later, somebody saw him filling gas at a gas station. Bhakti is always organic, Mataji. Bhakti is never to be forced upon ourselves. That's my inherent nature. If you can do 32 rounds, very good. But if you're going to do 32 rounds because you saw somebody else do 32 rounds, you might not be at that other person's level. I might not be there. I will go with the minimum 16 and I will increase it as my life and my environment permits me to do it. I have a 40-hour-a-week job to do. I have my family to take care of. I have mortgages to pay. If I start saying, no, I'll forget all this, I will do 32 rounds, which takes another 2 hours. Right now, I'm investing 2 hours in 16. So probably in the evening also 2 hours I will spend on that. I don't care about my family. That might not be the appropriate thing to do. So growth in Bhakti, as I said, is organic. We should not try to force anything on ourselves. If you can take time out in a very conducive environment for yourself to do 32, you are more than free to do 32. Prabhupada never stopped anybody from that. And you are right, doing more chanting is always beneficial. I'll give you my personal example, Madhuri. I'll tell you something. Around 5 years ago, I would do 24 rounds. But you will not believe it that to do those 24 rounds, the quality was so bad, it was just useless for me to spend those extra time on those extra 8 hours. I realized that took me a time to realize that. And I came back to 16. So the quality is more important than quantity. So I gave up 24 I did start doing 16 again. But then whenever I get chance, I do more. We do more. Not just me, many devotees do that. In this group also, many devotees. For example, Janmashtami, we are fasting the whole day. We try to do many more rounds. 32, 64. I know many devotees in the entire Karthik, they do 64 rounds every day. I know many such devotees. But then it should not be a way of thinking that, I will become so much better by doing 32 rounds, even if it makes my life of me and my near ones miserable. That shouldn't be the thought process. I'm not sure if that made sense to you, Madhuri.
Yes, Prabhuji, it does make sense.
So no harm in doing 32, 64, whatever you can do. But we have to understand where I stand. I have to understand that. And sometimes we become so stone-hearted to the people around us just for the sake of doing bhakti. I know a devotee couple, they're very good friends of mine. But the Prabhuji, he's so focused on his bhakti that in the morning when he's chanting and his kids wake up and come to him, he gets very angry. He gets angry on his wife. Why don't you take care of the kids? I am doing my japa. They're disturbing me. My God, that's not the way to do it. We don't want to do those kind of 32 rounds. We don't want to hurt the people around us. It's not like I do 32 rounds and I go and knock the door of Golok and Krishna says, oh my God, here you come. No, Krishna will judge us. He will say, but yeah, what happened to the other people I sent around you? Did you take care of them? No, Krishna, I was doing 32, 64 rounds I was doing. You should let me in. Then Krishna will take out the videos and say, okay, I'll show you how 64 rounds you used to do. Half of them were either in anger. When will this end? Half of the time they were in half sleeping mode. Half of the time they were in thinking about your work and your everything else. So this is the way you did do 64 rounds. Better than that, do good 16 rounds at least. So, and then that's the real life example I'm giving you, Mataji. I know that Prabhuji and Mataji, they're fantastic devotees, extremely, very pious devotees doing a lot of service. But then, people have that mentality sometimes. You should not fall trap to that. So, yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
Prabhu.
You're welcome. Any more thoughts? Anything else on anybody's mind that they want to bring up for discussion? Please come up. Otherwise, I'll start calling people by their names. I'm thinking of doing that probably from the next class. Do that. Still nobody wants to speak. Okay. Okay.
Haribo, can you hear me?
My mind, when Shalini was mentioning about that 32 round, it's not about like whether we get the rasa or not. Initially you won't get the rasa. I mean, this is a reality. I mean, I'm doing since this is my realization. I'm doing since almost several months now, the 16 rounds. But sometimes I don't get the rasa. This is the reality. But I need to make sure that I follow this thing. My practice will be there. Just like when you wake up 4 o'clock, you have to wake up 4 o'clock, right? Whether you like it or don't like it, or just walk around, whether you are doing the exercise or not. So that's how we get into the regime. So it's like we are a human, we are not a robot or something. So eventually we will start, one day we will start getting rasa. So this is the anticipation I'm living with.
Yes, that's a very good way of putting it. Yeah. There's an anticipation in our hearts that we will get the rasa. Yeah, so we don't want to burn out ourselves. Yes, Sankirtan Prabhu, you're saying something?
Yes, this is, a very, very special understanding. I mean, they asked Prabhupada one time, Prabhupada, how do I know I'm chanting quality rounds? He says, well, you don't know what quality rounds are. You are forced to chant 16 rounds. You have to chant 16. And by regulation, you're forced. So if you go past what your regulation is, you might know what good rounds are. But then again, he said at the same time, how another way of defining quality rounds is that when you chanted your 16, you wanted to chant more. You didn't want to stop. So one thing is, I realized Prabhupada is a divine trickster, because he knew, and this is something we don't know, is that this is something like radioactivity, this holy name, and just by its association, if you're real sincere, it's just going to penetrate and penetrate. So the more you keep it with you, the more you'll change. So if you would just chant one round perfectly, it would just be amazing. If you would just chant one mantra perfectly, if you could just one mantra, everything would be revealed to you. So Prabhupada knows, I'll give them 16. If they really try, he tricked us, because we'll want to chant 64, we'll want to chant 666. Because he knows that the potency is there. So I got to get them, and I don't need them to be frustrated. And number two, he was a good manager. He understood, because if I try to chant 64 rounds, there's no way you people see me during the week. You'd be lucky to. I would never be able to get on that truck, and I'd have my job, and I'd have this, and I'd never be able to get together, because 64 rounds. And if you want to do it, like you said, like you're trying to do 24, you're trying to do quality and everything else. It just does not fit into our schedule. And these early devotees that were taking care of Prabhupada and serving his mission, they were doing so many activities. And then I was thinking to myself, well, how in the heck did Bhakti-siddhanta, who was a Vaikuntha man, how did he have an army of people going and doing their things, and they're chanting 64 rounds a day? Well, I also read where he said that, if you keep chanting all the time, all the time. I look at the devotee right there with the glasses. What's his name? Starts with the S. That was just talking. What is his name?
Surendra Prabhu.
Yeah, Surendra. Maybe in about a year or two I'll remember his name, but I know his face, and he So, you know, if he runs around all day and he just chanted the holy name, just chanting, he'll do 16 on the beads, but Prabhupada said 16 on the beads, countless off the beads. And so I read once, I kept, you know, I was so frustrated, but I read one sentence and I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw it and it made sense. And Bhaktisiddhanta said, if you keep chanting, you'll do your 64 rounds each day. So, you know, I mean, obviously, if you're glued to the computer and you're doing your IT thing, you can't multitask there. But but other times, at all times, you know, oh, you just got out of the car at the temple and you're walking. What are you doing? You're walking on the side. What are you doing? No, what are you doing? Keep asking yourself until you say the right thing. And the right thing is, I'm chanting the holy name. I'm driving in the car. I can't get in the car without saying the Panchatattva mantra. I can't. I say that and then I start chanting. I cannot do anything. As soon as I go into the idle mode, I'm by default. My existence is default chant. Don't do anything mundane. Don't do anything. So what do? Oh, you're vacuuming. Oh, you're washing the plates. What are you doing? Even though it's Krishna conscious activity, you must have the holy name. So there's a science here, and we got to take to that. So I'm just, you know, I'm thankful to hear, you know, like Surendra, and in just a couple months, he's grasped something very special, and that is, you know, you got to be patient and you got to be serious. You know, he's highlighting that in such an infant stage. So he's already running the dash, you know, he's going to hit it. And another thing, you can't get the rasa. Yeah, you know, it's that is the biggest trip is pretty soon. If everyone just chants, you know, because we want to get a taste, we want to enjoy, you know, you'll get something there. But then pretty soon you'll hit a brick wall and you say, well, what happened? Oh, it's always should be chanting for Krishna's pleasure. So the sooner we realize that the one became the many for his pleasure, then we will automatically enjoy more than we've ever done. So that's my only point. I mean, I could take us for the next 2 hours, but you guys just keep me thinking so much. When I hear the holy name, I get very triggered because each one of these things takes an hour to take it to the end. And then you want to jump off and do it. So I'm just thankful, you know, we get to discuss, and all the answers and all the attitudes are very, very clean and positive. So Nitya Gauranga.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Prabhupada is explaining here that the material life is so attractive that we forget that there is a problem here and we just keep enjoying it. That is why Prabhupada is calling it a disease state, right? If you heard of there's this lecture that Steve Jobs gave at Stanford. You know, they were giving him an honorary degree there, and he gave a talk there, and he talked about 3 things. One was about, you know, connecting dots. But in your life, you can never connect dots in the future. Oh, this will happen, that will happen, and I'll do that. And he says you can always connect dot in the past. You can learn from what has happened in the past. You can learn from your experiences. So you can connect dots in the past. Was one thing that he talks about. The another thing that he talks about is about death. He comments about death. That how death gives us the right perspective. You know, whatever we are considering of great value, and when we value that against the temporariness of this life, that helps me come out of ignorance and prioritize. And that's why we are always asked to read again and again. And that's what Prabhupada is saying again and again in every book, in every page. You are not this body, you are a soul. Jivera Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. Jivera, this living entity that I am, the tiny living entity, my original position is to be a servant to Krishna. He keeps us telling that again and again, again and again. So that helps us come out of that ignorance, from the disease state where we are right now. So Prabhupada is highlighting that. And he says that for jaundice, sugar candy is the only specific medicine. So Prabhupada should know that. Prabhupada was a pharmacist, right? So That medicine, as we talked about, is chanting, right? And how is that chanting supposed to be done? Adarad anudinam, care and attention, that has to be there. Otherwise, the avidya will again seep into the whole thing. Avidya will lead to ahankar, and ahankar will then sense gratificatory thoughts, and then we'll distraction, and then we'll get sucked in again. So, adarat anudinam, by care and attention, we should chant, and the results are, Mahaprabhu has given that us in his Shikshashtakam, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, cleaning of the heart, the mirror of the heart. And where does that happen? Prabhupada has created a hospital for us. It's called ISKCON. We all have unique symptoms of ignorance. My symptoms of ignorance might be different than others, but the root is same, is ignorance, but the outcome is different. Because of my ignorance, I might be a proud person. Somebody out of their ignorance might think that, oh, this is my real life, or something like any sort of that, right? Disease of the heart. So ISKCON provides the best medicine. Sadhu Sangha, Shraddha. Prabhupada explains that in the purport, and I'll pull that up. I think it's the next slide. I'll show you that. So we talked about the going to the heart, right? So I mentioned that how when we keep thinking about something again and again, it becomes so deep-rooted that it goes into our subconsciousness and sits in our heart. Chitta, which is the seat of our consciousness. It has so many of our past samskars, unfulfilled desires, thoughts. Thoughts are called vrittis. They're like ripples in a lake, right? Whatever we think leaves a ripple in the heart, in our consciousness, right? And we carry them from one life to another. And it's the heart, the chitta, right, is going through constant agitation 24/7. That is why the disease in the heart. There's a constant agitation of my heart. And Prabhupada characterizes all these as misconceptions. They are misconceptions. Right? We each, as I said, right, each one of has as a different outcome of that ignorance that we are slaves to. Right? It can be coming from different sources. Right? These misgivings. These misgivings in Sanskrit are called vibhrama. Right? Now there can be many types of vibhrama. One can be swatattva vibhrama, which is, who am I? Rarely anybody asks that question. Swatattva vibhrama, who am I? Somebody will say, I'm an American, I'm a fan of this team, or I work for the army, and also we have our own identification. So that's a vibhrama. That's one of the misgivings, one of the misidentifications, misconceptions. Swatattva vibhrama. Then it could be paratattva vibhrama, right? Where did this world come from? What is the cause of all this? Why are we here? Some say it came from nothing. Krishna talks of these demoniac people in the 16th chapter, that they say that asatyam apratishtante jagatahu ranishwaram aparaspara sambhutam kimanye kama hetukam. Right? He's saying that it's kama hetukam. Kama. So sex is the basis of this creation. So people say that. So there is a paratattva vibhrama. People are illusioned about what this world is for. Right? Then there is sadhana sadhya vibhrama. There can be sadhana sadhya vibhrama means what is the ultimate goal of this life and which path to follow. People don't know that. We meet so many people on book distribution that they don't know what to do. Somebody will say, I meditate on Om, I sit in a room, I light my incense stick, I put on a light music. Well, they don't know what path to follow. What is the right path? Somebody say, I go and sit in a hot sauna bath, and then there I get my nirvana and whatnot. So people don't know what path to follow. It's a sadhana sadhya vibhrama. Okay. So many types of vibhramas, which are like these ripples in our heart that are confusing us, misgivings. Right? For example, I heard this story that how once the parents asked the child that, okay, what are you going to be when you grow up? Right? And the child said, I'm going to be a truck driver when I grow up. And that left his parents very infuriated. No, what do you mean? You'll be a truck driver? But then when you think it from the kid's perspective, he thought that, oh, I love to travel. And the truck driver goes all over the country. So being a truck driver might be a good thing. So that's a vibhrama. We don't know what is right and wrong. Then the vibhrama comes. It's actually antagonistic for my growth. It's virodhi vibhrama, virodhi vishaya vibhrama, right? We are unaware of contradictory things. I'm unaware of that. I don't know what is detrimental for my life. And a very good example of that is cigarette smoking. Cigarette packs, they clearly say tobacco kills, causes cancer. In India, they even put photos, these very horrific, gross photos on the pack of cigarettes, right? But then has that stopped people from smoking? Can anybody guess what's the global value of tobacco market in US? Not global market. US market value of tobacco. Does anybody know? Can give some thoughts, give a number. What do you think it could be?
Huge, billions of dollars.
Yeah, billions. How many billions do you think it is?
Maybe 100 or 200 billion.
Okay. Anybody else has a number in mind?
$10 billion.
No, it's actually I read this in 2022. It was close to $800 billion. That's the tobacco market in US alone, right? So just imagine. So it's virodhi vishaya vibhrama. I don't know what is good for me. Can you just imagine? How can I take right decisions? I need somebody to tell me. And when knowledge comes out of this closed system that I am stuck in, then I can transcend this system. And that's where the Bhagavatam comes in. That's where the scriptures come in. That's where the sadhu comes in. The sadhu is bringing that information from outside this closed system. And then that closed system, then I'm able to come out of this. By myself, I can't figure it out. We need that association of devotees that helps us. And when we chant, one is freed from this blazing fire of vibhrama that we are suffering in. So that's where the whole process of chanting comes in, and then there are the 10 offenses to chanting we have. I think we can just let me pull that up. I think I had it somewhere. Give me 1 second. That could be something that you all could even do. Is you could read that, the 10 offenses, and think more about it. You can discuss that. Let me see. Okay, so the 10 offenses to chanting. This comes from Nectar of Devotion, chapter 8, and so offenses to be avoided: to blaspheme the devotees who have dedicated their lives for propagating the holy name of the Lord; to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu; disobey the orders of the spiritual master; to blaspheme the Vedic literature; consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination; to give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord; to commit sinful activities on the strength of the holy name of the Lord; to consider chanting as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities, karma kand; to instruct a faithless person about the glories of the holy name; to not have complete faith in the chanting of the holy names, and to maintain material attachment even after understanding so many instructions. So these 10 are the main offenses for the holy name, and the purpose for all these is to create a fence for us, so that we don't fall off completely. That's the purpose of these. So I'll put this document, and you can even look up Nectar of Devotion, chapter 8, if you want to. I'll put this document also in the Google Doc. You can read it and think about it. How do these apply to your lives? That's something of value to understand, that how does each one of that add into our lives. So now let's look at the importance of the movement, what Prabhupada has given us. This is the last step of what Prabhupada explains to us. Prabhupada says, right, so these are the last 3 paragraphs of the purport. I think last 3, or probably somewhere towards the end you can find them. So The conclusion is that in order to get freed from the material disease, one must take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. The Krishna consciousness movement is especially meant for creating an atmosphere in which people can take to the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra. Right? That is one of Prabhupada's seven principles of ISKCON movement. The purposes of ISKCON are based on these stages of bhakti, how we can move forward on this stage. Creating temples, creating an environment where people can come and pray, like-minded people. So Prabhupada's movement is based on that. And if you will notice, I highlighted these sections. They talk of the stages as we go through. So Prabhupada walks us through the whole stages. One must begin with faith. So faith was Shraddha, what we read. Vacho vegam, mansa krodh vegam, jivva vegam, dharupastha vegam. Then comes sadhu sangha. You become a member of the society. And how do we behave with those members? Then there were those three verses. Dadati prati girnati. That was one verse. Krishneti yasya giritam. You pay your obeisances to the person by discriminating. And then Drishte subhava janiteva pushasya. That was the third verse, where we are told that we should not judge people on their outwardly appearance. Some people might not be physically very appealing, so we should not discriminate. So that's sadhu sangha. Then Prabhupada comes to bhajana kriya. And Prabhupada says if one is sincere, he is initiated. And that stage is called bhajana kriya. Then we start chanting regularly, 16 rounds, 4 regulative principles. When we keep doing bhajan kriya, then comes anartha nivritti, freedom from the contamination of materialistic life. We no longer have the strong desires to go to restaurants, meat, onions, all that. We not only refrain from illicit sex, it says avoid sex life entirely. What it means, what Prabhupada means is that sex life is only used for bringing into this world Krishna conscious children. So that's what it means, avoiding sex life. No wasting of time. Avyartha kalatvam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Avyartha kalatvam. That is one of the qualities of a devotee, is that he or she does not want to waste time at all. And that means that we are being cleansed of anartha nivritti, of unwanted things. Anartha nivritti is happening in our lives. After that, what happens? We become fixed, becomes nishtha. This text becomes nishtha, right? After nishtha, ruchi, we become attachment. Ruchi is attachment, and asakti is ecstasy. We experience ecstasy in executing devotional service, and you all might be already feeling that ecstasy, right? When you do some service, you get so engrossed in it. You feel enlivened. You feel very happy. For some time, you completely forget about all your miseries in life. So that's the ecstasy we feel. And then what happens is bhava, preliminary awakening of dormant love of Godhead. There is another stage that comes after that, that is prema. Then we'll talk about that later. Prabhupada didn't bring it out here. There are 3 verses towards the end that talk about this. We have to understand that Krishna doesn't give prema to anybody very easily. Krishna can give everything. They'll give you all your material opulences, make you a king, make you the most handsome or the most beautiful person in this world. Krishna will give you everything from bhakti. Can give us all materialistic opulences. But what Krishna will not give is prema. Because Krishna has been hurt so many times in the past. Just like when we have a loved one, we love that person, and the next day we cheat them, we backstab them. And then again, when we go back and we expect them to have faith, that never happens so easily. They might forgive us for the past, but they don't trust us for the future. That's what Krishna is going through at this moment. Seeing all of us, all the time, when we are in the womb, we are praying to Krishna. Krishna, I will pray to you. I'll love you. I'll do everything. Please don't put me in this misery again. The moment we come out of the womb, immediately somebody puts a sticker on my forehead. Hey, your name is Puneet. This is what you're going to do in life. This is your religion. This is your, gotra and whatnot. I put stickers on my forehead the moment I'm born. And I start getting attached to them. I'm this person's son. So that's why Krishna doesn't give us prema that easily. That's why Prabhupada also doesn't take us to the prema phase in here yet. He'll bring it in the next phases. So this is, this is the end of the word. So we've gone through all that, and think about the offenses that we talked about. the 10 offenses. Think about more about them as you go forward. And we also talked about the japa, right? How do we improve our japa? There are 4 levels, and try to just consciously observe yourself where you are in those 4 stages. And we are still 8 minutes for our time to end. Anybody has any thoughts to share? Anything on your mind you want to bring out?
Just Prabhuji, question which you just mentioned, like, when we came out of the womb, like, somebody label us like with a name, or parents. Same thing, like, when we get the initiation, don't you think, like, we get the another name, another level? So how does it end in that?
Because when you're born, the label that you get gives you a material identity, which is ignorance, which is in ignorance. That's not my true identity. Right? Just like the case of Chitraketu Maharaj in Bhagavatam, his son is born, he calls him Harshishoka. The son's name is Harshishoka. The son leaves his body when he's 5. And Narad Muni come and tell him, Narad Muni in Chitraketu Maharaj cries bitterly, please bring my son back, I can't live without him. Narad Muni said, okay, I'll bring the soul back in this body for some time. The soul comes back, and the father Chitraketu asks the soul, why did you leave me? So the kid says, I'm sorry to ask you, but who are you? He says, I'm your father. He said, I don't know who my father is. I have had millions of fathers. I don't know who my father is. And then, the child talks, and then that immediately lights a bulb in Chitraketu Maharaj's mind. So that's a mode of ignorance. That's an ignorant identification I get. But when I get a spiritual name, that's my true identity that I'm being made aware of by the mercy of a sadhu, by the mercy of my spiritual master. Right. So that's the difference, Prabhu.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So we have to go through a lot. We have been suffering so much in this whole world. Being labeled again and again. Sometimes I'm a demigod, sometimes I'm an insect, sometimes I'm a pig. I've had names, I have had family. It's been a nightmare for all of us. Life's been slapping me back and forth. That is why austerities are needed. That is why we need to follow this path very sincerely, the simple path very sincerely. Right? Just like Acharyas give the example, right? Whenever you're making a gulab jamun, what do? You first fry it, you deep fry it, and then you soak it in sugar syrup. That is why when we go through all the austerities, what Prabhupada has given us, they're not actually austerities, they are blessings in disguise. When we go through all that, then we reach the nectar, then we reach the sugar syrup. If I start thinking, I should jump into the sugar syrup first, I won't get any taste. I have to go through that deep heating. I have to be fried, deep heat fried, to come to that position where I can be soaked in sugar syrup and become my true identity of a gulab jamun. That somebody can, it's tasteful. Any more thoughts? Sorry, I just kept rambling there. No more thoughts. Okay. Okay, then I'll be sending out the open book exam tomorrow for all of you. You'll have a week to address it. Open book means you're free to access any book, read any literature.